Congressman, this conversation, like how many times have you spoken to Ricky Williams and Jim McMahon, and how important is cannabis as a topic, as an industry for you here in Washington and trying to push, obviously, the narrative forward?
Well, I met with Ricky Williams here in my office a few months ago, and he was telling me his story and his journey when it comes to his mental health conditions and issues that he's had to face, and also with a lot of physical conditions as well. I just met Mr. McMahon today, and I'm a big fan. We're going to take a picture later, please. All right, thank you. But we were talking about a lot of the physical elements that he has going through the NFL and things that he's been facing. But the bottom line is, the thing that we were talking about before, Ricky and I, and what Mr. McMahon and I are going to be talking about, is how do we make sure that something like cannabis is available to as many people who need it? Mm-hmm. I think too many people focus on cannabis as something that people want. Right. Let me give you an example that's something that is legal in the United States. Alcohol. It's legal. Alcohol is something that people want. I don't know of any medicinal purposes for alcohol. It's a pleasure element. But when it comes to cannabis, cannabis is proven over and over and over by scientists, by doctors, by people who do the real research, that cannabis has a lot of benefits, not only to the human body, but to the human mind. So to me, I think it's just hopefully a matter of time before we get enough people in Washington, elected officials, educated to the fact that it's nothing to be afraid of. And it's something that if we regulate it properly, and if we actually legalize it properly, and 30 plus states have legalized it already, that it is something that could help not only society, but it can help individuals, especially when it comes to the mental health space.
I think the big thing right now for a lot of people is the fact that, let's all face it, we've understood this. We probably have seen somebody that we've known get an addiction to, like, say, opioids or fentanyl. There's 100,000 overdoses last year for fentanyl, and it's a Schedule II drug. Mm-hmm. Cannabis is a Schedule I drug. Yes. So I look at this right now, and some of the feedback that I've found in the last 24 hours is that people are uninformed right now. The conversation isn't happening enough. So again, this is an industry right now that has its medical benefits. Spoken briefly with Senator Mitt Romney, who's totally against this, asked him the question, at what point do you think that cannabis is deemed as a medicine for a lot of these people? The big thing right now, I think, is the first step is just have an open conversation, and let's just keep the conversation going, correct?
Oh, absolutely. When it was Schedule I at the federal level, if you look at the transcript of Congress, it was completely, totally derogatory and fear-mongering about why they should make it a Schedule I drug. And that's something that we have to contend with in this country, and realize that sometimes Congress and or human beings can make really grave mistakes. Again, the science wasn't behind legalizing cannabis back then, but the fear-mongering actually got it into a Schedule I, and we haven't been able to overcome that. But we need to overcome it, because now the science says, especially when it comes to certain ailments of little children, et cetera, the derivatives of cannabis, et cetera, can actually do wonders, and can actually be medically proven that it is good for people to consume it, to make sure that it's something that can help them with their health. Yeah. So we need to get there. When you talk about certain senators or certain members of Congress who just don't want to hear about it, that's a problem. They just don't want to hear about it. But I think that if you're going to...
Do you think it's a generational thing?
I think it's a political thing, first and foremost. I think first and foremost, some people think about, my constituencies aren't okay with it. But the question they really need to ask themselves is, are they willing to help their constituencies be educated, and then let their constituencies say whether or not they think that cannabis ought to be legalized? I think that's the way that we should approach it, making sure that more and more people are educated, so that by the time the politicians can actually think twice about whether they're going to be yes or no about it, they can actually look at their constituencies, and the constituencies might tell them, you know what, I wasn't okay with it when I elected you the first time. I'm cool with you voting to take it off of Schedule I.
So how do you do that? You have conversations with Jim, with Ricky. Does that help progress, like, as far as getting through the constituents and pushing the narrative forward? Like, how do you do that?
I think that it's important that people like Jim and Ricky need to continue to be that voice, and then bring other voices around the table to go ahead and get to people in different ways. I think that maybe, for example, if you have members of Congress who are mothers and fathers, and then you actually get somebody whose child is drastically affected by the derivatives of cannabis, then they would probably be more open to it. Well, one of the things that I think is important, like I said earlier, is that getting people from different backgrounds and giving people with different experiences to come up and talk to the members of Congress, so that people can open their minds, just be at least open to it. Too many members right now, they're like, oh, as soon as they hear the word cannabis, they go, no, nothing to talk about, and that's unfortunate. Science should help us make decisions. Facts should help us make decisions. Being afraid of something because we don't even know why we're afraid of it shouldn't be why we make decisions and how we make decisions.
Yeah, as we pointed out, when cannabis was made Schedule 1, like the kind of the thought process behind it. And I feel like a lot of the people in Congress might not know that.
No,
but
they
I think
don't.
that's part of the storytelling around cannabis. Is how did we get here in the first place?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and with all due respect, I think that when you look at the number of women who are in Congress now, and you look at when it was created as Schedule 1, I think they might have had one or no women in Congress. I think
it
back
was
then.
very.
So we're a different Congress. We should be approaching it differently than 99.9% old white men. Now we have people who look like America in Congress. And I'm not saying because we have a more diverse Congress that we're going to get a different outcome automatically. But what I think is that we should be willing to approach every member of Congress and then figure out how to get them to understand how important it is to their constituency and how important it is to people that they love. Like I said, there's examples of little children who have had seizures, multiple seizures in one day. And you have medical doctors, you have scientists, and you have the parents talking about how their child now only has that kind of episode maybe once a week. I mean, that's a game changer. That is life transforming. You're talking about a quality of life that nobody wants to see their loved one go through. And then to be able to have a quality of life where the child can play with other kids instead of just being homebound and not being able to even enjoy life. These are the kinds of things that I think people need to hear about as well.
Yeah. It's the storytelling, because the story that we've all inherited is that this is horrible.
Truth telling. Because anybody can tell a story.
Yeah.
I know guys who run for president who tell stories.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's truth. So just truth telling. And that's the beauty of cannabis. Cannabis today it's easy to fill the dialogue with truth and not have to pull something out of left field and make something up. Actually, the people who actually don't want to hear about cannabis are pulling from things that don't make any sense and aren't based in fact.
Yeah. To your earlier point, this Congress is not responsible for making cannabis illegal.
Correct.
But respectfully, this Congress is responsible for keeping it illegal. And it's incumbent upon you all to make that change.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right.
And one thing I was saying too earlier is like how folks like Ricky and Jim can provide cover for maybe some of the more conservative members whose, general public in their districts maybe aren't as forward leaning yet, but having the different voices like that, because they're not going to listen necessarily to you or other members of Congress, but having their voice.
I personally can talk to any one of my colleagues. For some of my colleagues, it's a phone call, come on over to my office right now. With another colleague, maybe in the Senate, it's like, have your team call my team and we'll be sitting down soon, maybe 2-3 weeks later, I'll be sitting down with them. But just because I can sit with that person doesn't mean that they know me, doesn't mean that they trust me, doesn't mean that they're gonna believe my truths as I'm saying it. So it's important that we get people from different vantage points and people from different states and different communities, et cetera. What I would love to see one of these days, I haven't met that person yet, is get somebody who's a member of clergy who's actually saying, you know what?
What's happening? I like it. He's like, I got it.
Can I get an amen?
I'm one of the organizers and board members for CFP, and this is one of my projects. Now, this is specifically a Puerto Rican.
I would say it's one of my purposes, but go ahead.
So specifically,
We'll write up on that.
I'm trying to meet people in the African American community where they are, which is one of the most congregated of every Sunday in church. So at church, the pastor is somebody, like you're saying, they know the pastor, they trust him. So if we can get to these pastors, these priests, and these people who control these congregations and they trust their words, and we can get them to say that, yo, if you give your child this RSO and they have epilepsy, it'll help them. Like, but that is the kind of like everybody's saying the same thing, right? Like those people that the constituents trust. You need to be able to get those people to be microphones for us because government has not been the kindest to the constituents
Well,
over
absolutely.
time.
There's a fear.
Yeah.
There's a fear. It's against the law, so I'm not going to touch it, right? But the thing is, another aspect of that is you have people who are retired, and they could be retired and they had a badge, or they were clergy, you know. So we could go talk to people who are retired. And the thing is, what I've witnessed with politicians specifically, nothing changes a politician's willingness to reconsider their position on something than watching a loved one suffer.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? And so we just need to find those individuals who are rigid about not even listening, not even being open to it. And then eventually find those individuals who say, I was completely against it. And then until I saw it with my own eyes, and then I confirmed it with a medical doctor who was taking care of my grandchild or my daughter or what have you. And then all of a sudden now I believe, right? And now I can say with conviction that I was wrong.
Do you think there's a lot of politicians here in Washington who've had some sort of family member or friend that has been affected by opioid addiction?
I think
Opioid? Yeah.
I think the vantage point to answer that question, to get at it, I'm the youngest of 11. I have 40 some nieces and nephews. I couldn't tell you on any given day what they've been through for the last 6 months, but I can tell you about the ones that haven't found themselves in such a dire situation that I haven't had a conversation with my brother or sister, their parents about them. So I'm qualifying the answer to your question. So I think when it comes to politicians, I represent 700,000 people. Senator Padilla in California represents 40 million people, the entire state. You have other members of the Senate who represent 7 million, 3 million people. So what I'm saying is there's somebody in their orbit that they care about, that they would give an audience to, that they would trust and believe when they say, let me tell you, Senator, and respectfully know them by their first name. And say, you know my daughter, Sheila, right? Yes, little Sheila, how is she? Well, let me tell you how she's been, and let me tell you what her quality of life was until we found this derivative of cannabis that actually has changed our lives, the entire family's life. So the thing is, what we should and could do is those organizations that are actually carefully administering that kind of help to people, to try to figure out how to glean out those individuals who might say, yeah, I grew up next door to Senator so-and-so.
Yeah.
We know each other by first names. My daddy and his daddy, you know what I'm saying? We're best friends. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If we did that, you have no idea how much impact that would have to getting powerful people to listen. The first thing they need to be doing is being open to listening. They've never met you before. If they don't never followed football, etc., they might say, okay, McMahon sounds like a familiar name. This guy was in rushing here. Yeah, there you go.
Tonight.
But you get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So the thing is, but to get somebody so close and so personal to them, to actually tell them their truth, will at least start to get them to open up their willingness.
I always say, if everyone who had a story to tell would tell it to an elected official, this would not be a debate. Now, speaking of debate, we have to go because you're already good. But thank you for all you've done and your votes and your support and this time.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.